Welcome to the Camera Shake Photoshop series. Today we'll learn how to change the color of just about anything in Photoshop. Hi there and welcome to the Camera Shake Photoshop series. My name is Kersten, and today I'm going to show you how you can change the color of just about anything in Photoshop using hue saturation layers. But before we get into it, let me just tell you about the weekly podcast that I co-host with my friend Nick Kirby. It's called the Camera Shake Podcast. It'd be awesome if you could come along and check it out. I'm going to leave the link to the podcast itself and to my website, kirstenlutz.com, in the description. Please go ahead and click like on this video, hit subscribe, hit the bell, you know the spiel. It would really help the channel out. So without further ado, let's get into Photoshop. So here we are in Photoshop and we're looking at a yellow Ferrari. Now, most Ferraris I've seen are red, so we're going to change the color of this car into red. Now, I'm not exactly sure what model this is, but it reminds me of the Magnum PI car. So if anybody knows exactly what that model is, then please let me know in the comments below. But okay, so let's get started. The first thing we gotta do is we're gonna have to go to Layer. We're gonna go to New Adjustment Layer, and we're gonna create a hue saturation layer. So you click on here, click OK. Now, if you look on the right-hand side here, you can see we've just created a new hue saturation layer. Now, to start with, what this allows us to do is it basically allows us to change any color into any other color of our choosing. Now, if we look at the hue bar up here, you can see that if I move this around, it starts changing our colors. In fact, we can immediately see that our car is turning lime green. It's not really a Ferrari color, is it? It goes into darker green, some turquoisey kind of color. And we're going into the oranges, the reds, pink. Oh well. We're going to go to blue here. Now, what's interesting is that if we go to the other end, we arrive back at blue. So this is really a loop. So we're just going to go around the color wheel, essentially. Now, as we're changing the color of our Ferrari, you can also see that the other colors around it are changing as well. So if you have a closer look at the grass or at the driver jacket, inside of the car, you can see all of these colors are changing. Now, we don't want to change all the colors in our image. We want to basically narrow that down to just the Ferrari itself. So what we're going to do is, we're just going to reset this for a minute. Now, let's have a look at this drop-down menu here. By default, it's set to master, but we're going to basically pick a color that's as close as we can get to the color that we actually want to affect. So in our case, that's yellow. So don't worry if it's not exactly yellow. Like for instance, if you were trying to affect an orange, yellow is probably the closest to orange, so you'd probably pick yellow. Now, down here, we've got two U bars here. Now the top bar basically shows us the color that we are trying to affect, and the bottom bar will be the color that we're turning this color into. So if I now change my U bar up here, my slider, you can see that the color in the bottom bar is starting to change. And over here you can see our Ferrari is starting to get red. And if you look at the bottom bar here, you can see the yellow. That was our starting color, if you want. We've now changed that into red. And if I move this over to this side, it turns green. And again, if you compare that to the car itself, you can see that that's now turned into green. So we can basically move this around and we can pick the color that we want our Ferrari to be. So how about pink? Or maybe not. So let's find something that's sort of roundabout red, kind of like here. Okay. And then we have two more sliders here. We can set the saturation, so we can make it really saturated, and we can make it, well, kind of gray, but I think we're gonna keep this maybe around about here. And then we can set the lightness of the color. We can make this really bright, so this is now turning into like a light pink, or we can make it really dark. Actually, that actually looks pretty good. I think I'm gonna go for that. Okay, so we've changed our color. We've decided we want to change the yellow into red. We've darkened it a little bit. That kind of looks pretty realistic. Now what we've got here also is we can narrow down the color range that we want to affect. So you could play around with these sliders here and you can see that it's starting to make a little change. Now, when you look at the car, if we look at the original state of the car, you can see, although it's yellow, we can sort of see slightly different tones of yellow. It's a little bit brighter here, it's a bit darker there. There may be sort of a slight, ever so slight orange hue over here. So we really need to determine the color range that we're trying to affect. And we can make that color range wider, or we can narrow it down. And on the side here, we can just decide how far it's sort of, fading in and out. But narrowing the color range can be useful if you've got multiple objects in an image and you want to really just affect a very particular tone of orange, for example, particularly when you have a person in the image and you want to separate the skin tone from, let's say, a piece of clothing that's a similar color. You can really narrow that down and create a really, really narrow color range. But for now, I think we're pretty good. Okay, so we have now successfully changed the color of our Ferrari. However, if we have a closer look, we'll just turn this hue saturation look layer on and off, we can see that our greens have changed a little bit as well. So here we have a mask. So whenever we create an adjustment layer, it'll automatically create a mask for us. So what we can do is we can simply pick our brush tool. And if we paint with black on our brush tool, you can see that our original layer now starts to show through. So I'm just gonna do a very basic sort of mask around there. There you go. And for whoops, I went a little bit too far there. So that does happen. Just gonna change the color back to white. And of course, if we paint white on our image, then we're essentially closing that mask again. So we're hiding the background layer. So that looks pretty good. Okay. Okay, and here we go. So that was a really easy way to change our Ferrari from yellow to red. That was the original image. And in just a few simple steps, we managed to use hue saturation layers to pick out the yellow of the car and change it into a red Ferrari, which is what it should be. And you should now know how to change the color of just about anything in Photoshop. If you have any questions, just leave them in the comments below or let me know what you want me to cover next. And please remember to like this video, hit subscribe, hit the bell, and all of that shit.